This is not a game about doing the right thing. This is a game about how can they ensure that the voter is going to show up for their party in the midterms. This is what it's all about. They don't care that people are dying. They don't care that we're still our children completely bedbound. They care about their reputations and they care about their vote.
Your organization has achieved a significant dent in vaccine mandates.
We didn't do the science. We didn't do the clinical trials. We didn't do the post safety. But one thing we know it's rare.
Hello, and welcome to another engaging episode of Shot Callers. I am Carrie Bigford, Outreach Director with Texans for Vaccine Choice, and today we are very blessed to have Brianne Dressen, who is founder of React19 organization, who is working to recover the COVID vaccine injured. For those who haven't heard Brianne's story, even though it's a very well-known story, Brianne actually signed up for the AstraZeneca trials for the COVID-19 vaccines, and she was injured in those trials and has struggled to find recovery and help ever since. And she has taken that struggle into creating React19, which is an organization completely dedicated to providing help, research, and a future for the COVID-19 vaccine injured people. I am so excited and grateful to have Brianne here. She is a true warrior for this cause and a wonderful woman, and I'm so delighted to have her here today. Welcome to the show, Brianne.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
It is good to see you. It's been a minute.
Yep.
Yeah. So for those who don't know about your story in React19, could you kind of briefly give a history of how that happened and, a little bit about how you came to recognize the potential dangers in because you're not an anti-vaxxer. You believed in them so much that you were part of the trials.
For sure. Definitely. Now I like to say that I'm vaccine informed. Before I clearly was not. I did not understand the unfortunate, side effects that so many people had experienced even before me from the previous vaccines that were administered in the United States. So my experience is nothing new. I had extreme sensitivity to light and sound and severe paresthesias that went down one arm, moved to my other, and now I still have it all over my body. And paresthesia is for people to understand that don't have it. It's a painful pins and prickling numbness, tingling sensation. And it feels a little bit like an electrical sensation. It's bizarre. But anyway, that's called small fiber neuropathy. And the Hep B vaccines, you look right there on the label, small fiber neuropathy is one of the potential side effects. So this is something that's not new. It was just new to me. And because I was unaware of these side effects and my doctors were unaware, they were entirely ill-equipped and unable to treat me. And so my condition went from bad to worse, to where I almost lost my life. But if you go to followthesilenced.com, then you can learn about my story and our community as well.
Wonderful. And what made you decide to start React19?
It was after several months of the government failing us, because I was injured in the trials. So I was literally number 2 of the people that I've ever crossed paths with that was injured by the COVID shots. And because of that, people would find out that I was injured longer than they were, and they would reach out to me, be like, oh my gosh, what's happening to my body? Please tell me that everything's going to be okay, right? And so we just, those of us that were injured very early on just kind of turned into this gravitational center for everybody that came after us. And so they would come to us to try to get help, right? Because the government had abandoned them as well. So the drug company, they couldn't get away from me fast enough after my injury. And then the government kind of did the same thing, but they placated us first, and they actually studied us and analyzed what was going on with us, to the point where we thought that they were going to disclose this to the public, and then they just didn't. So it turned into this crazy cover-up in the end. And that was the heartbreaking part of it, because that was the end of my trust in the establishment. It ended with that final move. when I was first injured, because it was AstraZeneca here in the US, we did report my injury to the federal government because we were fully aware that AstraZeneca was not reporting my injury to the federal government. And 9 days later, the federal government did pull AstraZeneca out of the running here in the United States. So there was a lot of those types of moves that made me genuinely feel that the government was going to do the right thing in the end, but then they didn't. So
Yeah. Abandonment is the most common emotion that vaccine injured people feel. Is they feel completely abandoned and gaslit about their injuries. And you're unique because you were injured in the trials. And it seems like I recall that part of the contract between you and AstraZeneca is that they would provide medical care if you were to become injured. And did that happen?
yeah, they were supposed to help medically and financially if there was an issue. And as soon as I reported my injury, they went radio silent, and it didn't matter how bad it got, how many phone calls, pleas for help from me or my husband. They couldn't get away from us fast enough. So they offered me a settlement letter at the end of 2021. This was 1 year into my injury. And the only reason they sent me this letter is because a major mainstream reporter had reached out to them for a statement. And, they didn't want to look bad. So they told the reporter, yes, we've offered her a settlement and we're just waiting to hear back. Literally, while they were on the phone with her, we timed it out. The reporter. They sent me an email with the settlement for $1,200. They had misspelled my
That's it?
name. Yeah, it misspelled my name in the email. And while at that exact same time when the email came through with the settlement offer, I was in a hospital facility getting an infusion that cost me out of pocket over $3,000 a month. So, so my husband was the one that got it. He was sitting right next to me because I was all IV'd up and drugged out and sleeping. So I didn't respond poorly to this heavy duty medication that I now need for life. And my husband was not very happy.
Yeah, reasonably so. Like, that's a rage-inducing moment. It seems like that's almost breach of contract. Did you ever try and take legal action against AstraZeneca for breach of contract?
Yeah, so we teamed up with Aaron Siri and Michael Connett, and they filed a lawsuit, a federal lawsuit that went through the courts here in my home state for breach of contract because they did put in writing that you know, they would help if there was a problem. And to be totally honest, like that's the reason why I signed up was because I was like, oh, they've got this in writing. Even if something were to go wrong, they're going to help. Right. And instead they left me for dead. And it's not like it was just like a little casual accident. Like I gave them the benefit of the doubt for literally months. It's like, oh, they're probably overwhelmed with people. They're super busy. And then, it wasn't until I got that settlement letter in November, only because a reporter reached out to him. I was like, oh, they're playing a very different game than I am. And they played that game with my life. And that's what's unfortunate about this. But so that is now at the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals. AstraZeneca is doing everything they can to make sure that they don't lose. Of course, that's what a drug company is going to do.
Yep.
It's not about my health. It's not about doing the right thing. They're standing behind the PrEP Act, which is the bill that was passed in 2005 that would provide blanket immunity for people and officials and companies that move quickly during an emergency. And they're alleging that, yes, that the PrEP Act even protects against contract violation, which if you think about all of the contracts that any company would sign during an emergency and for them to be able to just turn around and lie at any given moment and be protected from that, it's a pretty serious bar that they have set to challenge with the PrEP Act. So we'll see where that goes. That's kind of where it's sitting right now.
It seems like that would be an incredible precedent to set that line, saying that they can't cross this line, that they entered these contracts, that it's not, because it is, like the PrEP Act provides even though it's hard to imagine, even more robust liability shielding to everyone but the recipient than even the NCVIA of 1986. But the disconnect is they told all of us it's 95% effective. It's totally safe. And they knew as they were saying it that those were lies. And they can legally lie to us to coerce us into accepting procedures that they already know are unsafe while they're abandoning people from the, injured in the trials like you. What does that say about our system?
For sure. Yeah. It's kind of weird to like look at what the law says and what
Yeah.
the judges can interpret it to be, and what they interpret this to be can have far reaching downstream effects. And the thing is, this industry, it's not like they're, going to side with the people. They won't, and they never will. So giving them more and more and more flexibility is going to be catastrophic for everyday Americans.
Yes. The system is not for the recipients. That is one of the number one things that I endeavor to teach people is you can choose to accept risk. People accept risk all the time in every area of your life. But in this instance, you need to really be made aware that you are on your own on this tightrope of liability risk. And if something goes wrong, there is no net to catch you. And there will be no one down there.
100%. And that's the true measure of informed consent. And that's what's so crazy is people think that if you ask any questions, that, oh, you're a bad person and you're anti-help and anti, society. And it's actually, no, it's the opposite. We are very, very pro-health, and we are very pro-society. We want our neighborhoods and our communities to thrive and to be healthy. We want our children to be able to function in as healthy bodies as they can. And the fact that the only like counterbalance to that argument is, oh, you're all anti-vaxxers, you hate vaccines. It's like, but we haven't even said that we hate vaccines. We're earlier just saying we want you to be informed.
Yeah.
And that means that both the benefits and the risks get informed instead of all benefits, no risk, right?
And even inflated benefits. They made up benefits. Remember when they said that it stopped transmission? Oh, fancy that. They didn't even look at that in the trials. That was a bold-faced lie that was never even an endpoint in any of the trials.
Yeah, Pfizer definitely.
Yeah.
It was.
And it was astounding. It's not even real benefits. They are making up benefits that never existed, that were never even a possibility to exist as a coercive tactic. And then when it goes wrong, they leave you. And then it's like, oh, well, so sad, hard to be you, go with God,
Yeah. Well, and it's weird to realize that the influence of the drug companies is immense. Now that there's a new administration in, I think we all were wildly expecting something than the reality that we're dealing with now in almost the summer of 2026. But the health agencies, including the CDC, the
NIH, the FDA, HHS in general.
So the NIH has the NIH is a academic type institution. So the NIH does have the capability and the intellectuals available to make these types of in-depth analyses. But even within the CDC, we've discovered that there are a bunch of employees there that are straight up your typical government employee. And they've just been getting all of their work done by industry for them. So what was happening during the pandemic is press releases and different consultants from the drug companies were literally feeding the CDC the data that they were then translating and releasing to the world. And now the health secretary has put a block on that. And so now these employees inside these the health agencies, there's nothing for them. right? There's no one feeding them, giving them the information on a silver spoon or a silver platter. They don't know how to do the analyses correctly. They don't know how to assess the risks and the benefits of anything, whether it's a disease or a vaccine, let alone a pharmaceutical product. Who even knows what they're doing there? So there's been enough that we've seen over the last year and a half, 2 years, that we're seeing that it's not just that the drug companies have this big, powerful lobby and they, are able to dictate what the lawmakers do. We now understand how they've been able to manipulate behind the scenes within the health agencies without actually technically having an official seat at the table. So this is all like behind the guise of this is all shadow work essentially.
Yeah, it's the intensity of regulatory capture is hard to put your head around.
Yeah. And people think that it's like capture, like that they are bound and that the employees are like afraid, but they're not.
They flow together. They're part of that system. Right. They're willing participants. They're not like held hostage by pharma's, goons or whatever. They are the goons.
Well, they make them look good, right? So it's like, employee is like, hey, I need you to do this analysis on this, this, this. And then the employee is like, yeah, sure, I'll get that to you. And then they go and get it from pharma.
Yes.
So there's some
has a self-serving bias for sure.
Correct. And the only reason that's not going on right now is because of who the health secretary is. Whenever that change happens, if it happens, it very easily can go back to it. So when Rochelle Walensky, who was the acting CDC director during the mass vaccination campaign, when she came out and she actually stated, we were learning about the failing of the efficacy of the vaccines along with the rest of the world from the press releases, because that's what we were communicating from the drug companies' press releases instead of doing the analyses on ourselves. And she now admitted, she was like, oops. And then 2 weeks later, she was removed from office after that comment came out. But there's massive amount of incompetence that this is exactly why Texans for Vaccine Choice is so important. This is why what we do at React19 is so important, because the government is not going to do it. They literally do not have the tools in place to fix it. There is no real quality analyses going on, right? There is no clear picture.
And also, they don't really want to know because they'll be culpable in that harm. If they truly dig deep and acknowledge, even just from the COVID vaccine, not even looking at the other childhood vaccine schedule, because the COVID vaccine is just the newest iteration of the way the system has been working for decades. Right. Like it's just more people and it's more prevalent, but it's the same system. I've been in this space for like 26, 27 years now, which seems like a really long time. And it's the same system. I was the least surprised girl in the room to see all the things happening because this is what has been happening. And you had mentioned a new administration. RFK as HHS secretary has made more attempts to make positive changes and to bring real, as he calls it, radical transparency science to these spaces. And he has faced tremendous opposition. Yes?
Yeah. And there's like 5 people in HHS that are on our side. And there is 100,000 employees within all of the health agencies. I mean, I do genuinely believe that he's doing the best that he can.
I do.
It's for the COVID vaccine injured, we know for sure that Trump will not touch the COVID vaccines.
Yes.
We know that there, for whatever reason, of all of the issues that he promised to follow up on, the COVID vaccines is completely off the table. As far as the White House goes, it is a non-issue. Behind the scenes,
he still considers it a success.
For sure. Yeah. And so it goes, which is this, well, I don't want to be part of the reason people got harmed, right? Like he can't comprehend that, right? So at React19, we have been doing everything we can the second that the powers changed hands. We've been doing everything we can to elevate the this issue of COVID vaccine injuries. And we have been blocked from everywhere from, the call centers to mid-level management, all the way up to the White House. And everywhere in between, there's been very high-level conversations and debates and very heated arguments going on about this topic. And I will say, without divulging too much, but this is not a game about doing the right thing. This is a game about the voter. How is the voter going to vote? How can they ensure that the voter is going to show up for their party in the midterms? This is what it's all about. They don't care that people are dying. They don't care that there still are children completely bedbound. They don't care that there are these severely disabled kids that are now adults that are nonverbal and banging on walls and, are just trapped inside their bodies, just trying to find some kind of peace and comfort so they can function. Right?
They don't care about the next election cycle, and that's it.
They care about their reputations and they care about their vote, about the votes. Yes. And so for the freedom movement by large, I think there's no more important time for us to unite. I know that we all were like, the most important time to unite is, this is how it was in the presidential campaign, is now. And we did a phenomenal job.
We did.
But in reality, the most important time for us to unite is actually now. Instead of being pulled apart and, Bobby's either good or bad or whatever all of this noise is that we've been seeing, it's important for us to go, we want vaccine injury to be a topic that is addressed by this administration. If they are not willing to do so, then you don't have our vote. That's all that matters.
Yeah.
They don't care about anything else.
I mean, as you know, we have our outreach arm, which I am blessed to be director of, but we have our legislative arm that's been very successful at killing bad bills and passing protective pieces of legislation here in Texas. And I validate that. Putting pressure on their next election and changing the legislative makeup was one of the primary goals of our legislative arm, that we've been very successful at voting the bad guys out, voting the good guys in, continuing to watch the quote unquote good guy to make sure they don't go swampy on us,
Right.
to really hold them accountable. Because if they don't, we're watching, we're mobilizing, and we will get you out and replace you with someone who's less swampy than they are. Yeah. And it's so important as an individual to engage in the system, even though apathy seems to be running rampant. Now is the time. It's hitting a mainstream level that I, as a longtime advocate, prayed for so long, to have people see what I saw over a quarter of a century ago. I knew this was coming. I knew that all roads would lead to this. It was an inevitable thing that was going to happen that I saw a long, long time ago in 1999. And now is the moment to really find the tools to have those conversations with the people that you know in your lives and the people that you don't know yet, in a loving and connected way, to help them understand, regardless of your choices, we're here on your side to protect you. You have no consumer rights in this space, and you deserve consumer protections. There is a callous disregard for your safety, but we care about your safety, and we fight for your safety. Whether you agree with me or not, I'm here to go to the mattresses and fight for you, just like you are, Bri. And it is, it's an honor to do the work, but it's also thankless a lot of the time, as I'm sure you've experienced. It's a lot of, for sure, unglamorous work and late nights and early mornings and tremendous personal sacrifice. My family sacrifices. I know your family sacrifices. My whole team sacrifices. We're, 5 staff members and an army of volunteers doing all of this work. And it's because we know someone has to do it, or we will all be steamrolled and we will all lose our rights and our body autonomy. And if you lose the autonomy over your physical body, how are you still free, right?
For sure.
If you lose the ability to decide what gets injected into your physical person and you're no longer allowed to be part of that conversation, how are you free? Right?
Yeah.
Where does it end if they can inject you with whatever they want, right?
Well, I got to be honest. I mean, you are the reason that Texas is not a very different dictator type place. Like,
Thank you.
you guys are the reason. You guys are the perfect example of what is possible when people put their heads down together and just get to work. And like you said, the work is hard. And
It is.
you know, the podcast or whatever, like that's what people see on the outside. But
This is the fun part.
yeah, this is the
Yeah,
fun part.
this is the fun part.
97% of the stuff that we do, I think you would agree, is like grueling. Like
Oh, yes.
I spent several days like going through documents for this medical work that we're doing. And it just like several days of just reading and reading and reading and reading.
And it's not exciting. You're reading government documents and you're reading research and you're, trying to go through the FOIA request process and you're trying to like
Yes.
wonder where your FOIA request went to, like some black hole or some agency somewhere, you know? And you're
Yep.
trying to like get on the phone with a decision maker, any decision maker about something. And it is an honor and a privilege to get to be chosen to be a warrior for others. And I know it's so good for our spirit, but it's not easy and it's definitely not glamorous.
Well, I love what you said, because you said to be chosen, because I can't emphasize enough. You'll probably agree. I didn't choose this. This is what Joel says all the time. I didn't choose this. This chose me. But once you're called to do it, you can't walk away. I mean, there's no way to just put those blinders back on. It's not possible. And that's not God's work. This is God's work. And advocating and standing up for the little guy, there's no better way to, be a Christ-like human.
Yep.
And by
Be the human
that's-
piece.
there is nothing in return. You don't get anything in return. I don't get anything in return. But what we do get is freedom. And we fight for freedom. So
I want to leave my girls a better world than I inherited.
totally.
Yes,
They're worth it.
they are. And I don't want them to have to fight as hard as I've had to fight for them. And I do it willingly with my whole heart, as I know that you do too.
Yeah.
So back to the changes at the federal level, you have been at the federal Capitol, numerous times to testify at hearings that the wonderful Senator Ron Johnson has held. You were due to testify at the ASIF meeting that was supposed to take place March 18th, that was stopped by a federal judge named Brian Murphy, who stopped all the progress that ASIP had made and dismantled ASIP due to this AAP versus HHS lawsuit. If you guys haven't looked into it, the highlight is RFK came into the space, decided to bring actual science and actual scientists to review the actual data in ASIP. They made changes to the vaccine schedule. Pharma felt their cash cow being threatened, and so they retaliated with a lawsuit through AAP, who fought and was granted a temporary stay over all changes that ASIP has made in 2025 and disbanded the ASIP members. What was going to happen at that March 18th meeting, Bree?
Well, it was really going to be a time for COVID vaccine adverse events to rise above the surface of the water, that we have never been able to get this officially on record at this degree. So there was going to be in the document that was eventually released, it shows that they were going to vote on post-COVID vaccine syndrome, if that was a thing. They were going to vote on different, to start researching different clinical guidelines to figure out how to treat the conditions, and just very like common sense things. They were not going to be talking about, oh, the shots are crap, and they, like I think ACIP and the CDC had worked through enough negotiations that this was very clearly going to be the first ever science-based logical conversation on both the benefits and the risks of the COVID vaccines. They also were they still were implementing descending perspectives. So they had several people lined up that were going to come and talk about how dangerous it even is to talk about COVID vaccine adverse events. They were going to give them the airtime, right? Because that's what a fair and balanced debate
That's
should
what
be.
science is, right?
Yeah, it should never be, this is it, and that's the end of the day. There should always be, well, what about this? What about this? What about this perspective, right? And that's why PhDs in particular are some of the most vaccine skeptical population of anyone, because they get really into the weeds, and if the weeds
Yeah.
don't add up scientifically, they can't put that into a little hole and ignore it. They just can't. So, but yeah, so we were invited to present, and Dr. Joel Wellskog and myself and a few members from the board were going to share the science that we had gathered. So this is stuff that's not out there currently. There's a lot of it that's actually groundbreaking. And so we're in the process of submitting a paper to be published through the scientific process on this right now. But it's common sense. All vaccines have side effects.
Yeah. All medical interventions, period.
And vaccines side effects, from the HPV vaccine, the MMR vaccine, all the way up to the COVID vaccine, Hep B, they have very similar mechanisms of action that need to be investigated, both singularly as individual shots, but then also combined, because there is something that's happening within the body that looks very similar amongst all of them. So let's figure it out. Is it all together or is it not? So the ACIP committee was going to firstly identify the similarities and differences between long COVID and the COVID vaccines, because both show that there's very, very similar overlap between the two conditions, and it's due to spike protein exposure, right? So all of this was very common sense, but the sticking point for the Trump administration, as well as what ended up being the final poll, which was the judge came out of left field. We were watching all these other people that were working to get it canceled, and then this guy just came out of left. So, but they all were like, this can't be touched. So you got to remember that the ACIP, this exact same meeting was supposed to happen in February, and it got canceled. And it got canceled by the administration. They said, no, we'll deal with this in November. And there were some very brave individuals that confronted them and said, you guys have blood on your hands if you're just going to be cool with making severely injured people, right? And it's not like, oh, they were injured 5 years ago, they're fine, they're hanging out in a wheelchair in front of the TV. It's like literally pain in their bodies every minute of every day, to the point where they can't get out of bed. Even existing perfectly horizontal in their bed is not comfortable. They are being terrorized in their body all the time. Doesn't matter if they are awake or asleep, in their bed, not in their bed, trying to eat, if they can't even eat at all, right?
Yeah.
They are
Because they trust the government, right?
Sure, yeah.
They trusted. They did what they were asked to do.
Yeah. So they are surviving every single day. And the people that they trusted with their lives that abandoned them, okay, they have a absolute responsibility in replacement for that broad PrEP Act protection. They have a very clear moral obligation to these severely injured people to do the right thing. to find medical protocols at the very least.
Yes.
Identify those medical protocols, educate the medical community on what those are, help these people get out of a literal living hell,
Yeah.
and bring them just a little bit of peace in their bodies. That's it.
And even
But even now,
acknowledgement, like they haven't even created an ICD-10 code to acknowledge the existence of these people within the medical field. Like for those of you in the audience who aren't aware, in the medical industry, an ICD-10 code is what identifies your diagnosis as being real, as existing within the system. So you can bill for it, you can code for it, you can seek disability for it, you can get SSI for it. It's an ICD-10 code is your identifier. And we currently don't have one for the, long-term COVID vaccine injured people who have been so seriously hurt by this product. And they're invisible, quite literally, in the system right now. And they won't even, they won't give them research, they won't give them financial compensation, but they won't even give them an acknowledgement of their existence in the system.
correct. And I'm sure you can imagine what that would do to someone emotionally.
It would destroy you.
So, yeah, it being injured by a pharmaceutical product is one thing, but everything that's happened after is just as traumatic as
Yes.
the physical condition itself. So the just to draw the, close the loop on the diagnosis code conversation, the WHO in 2021 did implement a COVID vaccine adverse event diagnosis code. The US government, as well as probably the vast majority of the developed countries across the globe, draw from the WHO's diagnosis code system for inspiration. So long COVID had a diagnosis code U09.9, I think, or U09.0. And then they brought up a COVID vaccine adverse event code, which was U12.9. This was back in 2021. So the US medical system did implement the long COVID diagnosis code. In addition, in 21 and 22, the US government then implemented a vaccine hesitancy diagnosis code, a unvaccinated for COVID vaccine diagnosis code, and a partially vaccinated diagnosis code. But they did not implement a fully vaccinated diagnosis code for the COVID vaccine, nor did they diagnose or implement the COVID vaccine adverse event diagnosis code. This diagnosis code was implemented in Germany and a few other countries. Germany was able to start using this code in the medical system. And because of that, through all of the data, they were able to identify what they call post-vac syndrome, which they have publicly stated happens in a rate of 1 in 5,000, which is way higher.
Which is really yes.
But then the other thing that they have identified is that it looks a lot like long COVID, but it happens after the vaccine. They have promised money for research because they have recognized it. Recognition is step one.
Yes.
They recognized it. So now there is a clinic, there's a call line for people. There now is research that's going to it. And they have publicly and openly had COVID vaccine injured patients, along with chronic fatigue patients and long COVID patients, in these open roundtables, so to speak, to discuss what the patients need from their government.
Right.
So we don't need to make it this hard. We don't
Right.
need to put all of these oh, we need to put anti-vax codes in, but we're not going to recognize that there's COVID vaccine injuries. We don't need to do this stuff. United States has been such a massive disappointment in this arena.
Yes.
Because we should be leading the charge. We led the charge on the development of the vaccines. We definitely led the charge on the consumption of the COVID vaccines. But then when it came to after the money's been made, abysmal failure. There's been no payouts. There's been no, addressing and recognizing injuries.
Yeah.
There's been no circling back on the process. Instead, they just keep doubling down and tripling down. And that's what we saw. This culmination of all of this resulted in the ASIP meeting getting canceled the first time. That was from the administration. The administration, as of right now, is not on the side of the COVID vaccine injured. It's just not.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that I'm, as a COVID vaccine injured person, that I'm heartbroken and, my body's going to fail. And because that's actually what happens usually with emotional stress.
Yeah.
I recognize where the shortcomings are. And now I understand where we need to pivot to get different things to happen that will help us. But not only are they not on our side, there are very specific arenas that are actually hostile to COVID vaccine injuries still to this day.
Yes, absolutely.
And so in this quest of doing everything we can to bring on essentially a Maha revolution, right? That we all stepped up and did our part to get us to where we were as a movement, broadly. We were the first to be cut out. The COVID vaccine injured specifically were the first to go. And all it took was Trump saying, this isn't what we're going to talk about.
Well, your existence is so inconvenient, and I think part of the challenge is because we led the charge in development and because we led the charge in consumption, there's a deep resistance to acknowledging the downside. But of course, every single medical intervention since the beginning of time has a risk-benefit ratio. All interventions have a downside. The idea that there would be this, no downside world is madness. I mean, you even drink too much water and you can mess up your electrolytes and give yourself a heart attack, and that's water. We can't decide on a universal diet that benefits everybody's health. The idea that there would be this panacea and a hypodermic needle is bananas.
It is. And we have to, look, we got to have a sense of humor sometimes.
Yes. I mean, it's either we laugh about it or we dissolve into a puddle of tears and frustration because
100%.
there is so much resistance that we have to find the humor in it.
Yep.
And it's just always struck me as bizarre that we acknowledge all this risk everywhere else, but here it's, a non-starter. And what makes this space so special and unique and different with its lower safety thresholds, with its complete and total liability shielding, and the consumer owns all the risk. Like, how would those things create a safer product for consumers? Like, make the math for me.
Totally.
Yeah.
It's, I mean, look, if somebody on your street drove down in a car and hit anyone's kid on your street and then drove off and left the kid there, all busted up on the road, there would be universal outrage, right?
Yeah.
This is the
It works in Georgia's.
Totally.
Yeah.
This is the only scenario when it comes to a child being injured by a vaccine. This is the only scenario that I can think of where society's like, that's the acceptable collateral damage, right?
It's a greater good. Right.
Correct. Yeah. Like this, you don't see that in any others. Anyway, so we got to even that score.
Yeah.
We're not going to stop. You guys are not going to stop.
No.
And the game is always evolving into, something that is far more alarming because I know it goes way beyond the COVID vaccines at this point.
Yeah.
And
again, the COVID vaccines are the newest iteration of the system that's been existing for decades.
Yeah. But we're not going to stop. And we've done amazing things in the past. The movement has done incredible things. So we're just going to do that. And one of those things is the diagnosis code issue. So we started meeting with the CDC last fall to talk about the importance of a COVID vaccine injury diagnosis code. And of course, at the very beginning, it was like, we don't even think this is a thing. So this is not important. And so we took a deep breath and we very patiently and clearly laid out our argument, which was, well, there's people all over the country that need this, and because they cannot be recognized, they cannot get the treatment for that specific condition. And they're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I think it makes perfect sense, because if you have a severe small fiber neuropathy that is triggered by a vaccine, you have to treat it as though it has been triggered by a vaccine. You cannot treat it as though it's been triggered by diabetes, which is typically where small fiber neuropathy happens. Totally different mechanisms of action.
Yes.
So we very gently went through those, over several meetings, to show the importance of this. And the day that the ACIP meeting was supposed to happen, we still had a separate meeting with the CDC to go over this proposed diagnosis code, which is B20, what is it? B25, T50B25. And there's three indications. So the first one is for an initial encounter. The second is for a subsequent encounter. And what I personally feel is the most important diagnosis is chronic, or sequelae, as it is in the medical field. So there's 3 diagnosis codes wrapped into the one. And it's been approved by the initial committee, which is a huge win. It's now in the public commenting period. And there's some information on our website, and we'll share it with you, with how people can email the committee in support of this very important common sense diagnosis code. And that will run until May 15th, 2026. After the public comment period is over, it goes through a review again in the fall, at which point then it's implemented into the billing systems nationwide for all the insurance companies, which takes a while. So this is going to go into effect in 2027. And where people can help support this is by emailing a comment in support of this diagnosis code to the committee.
To help you guys and no longer be invisible within the system.
Correct.
Right.
And who would have thought, it's like, hey, I had an issue with peanuts, and they'll put that in your chart.
Right.
And they're not going to scream at you.
And they don't have to try to penis it. And they don't have to see it. And if you give your kid amoxicillin and they broke out in hives, and you call your doctor and you go, oh, my kid got these terrible hives. They go, oh my goodness, I'll put this in your chart. No more amoxicillin or penicillin. Let's try azithromycin instead. And they give you an alternative, and they don't call you crazy. And they don't say, oh, well, that doesn't happen. That injury is a myth. Like, none of those things happen in any other space but this.
Yeah.
And it's preposterous, this idea that vaccines are the only thing that never, ever cause harm in a world where you leave your door and you're in a risk-benefit, gamut all the time. It's so maddening to me. Yes, to not be invisible. Like, what a reasonable, rational, entry-level bar to hold. And what does it say about our system that it has taken you years, more than half a decade of advocacy to get to step 1, which is acknowledgement of a problem, right? Because you cannot fix a problem that you will not acknowledge, and you are fighting for step 1. So looking back at the importance of the ICD-10 codes, you've been doing all of this advocacy, all of these discussions, all of this work to get to step 1, which is acknowledgement of a problem. Like, what do you think that says about the system and how it feels about the consumers that trust it?
It's the system obviously has problems, but it's also on our end. Kim Woodsack, who really advocated for SSRI black box warning for potential suicides. Talking with her early on, she shared that it took her 9 years to get that black box on, and that is about fighting against a massive shield of liability protection. And so understanding just how far we're going to have to push, I am extremely happy that we're able to say, look, we've got a diagnosis code coming. And that helps me feel like, okay, even though it's taking 5 friggin' years, the work and the fight is still worth it, even though it's, 99% of it is hard, like blocks, and no's and doors being slammed in our faces. But we will seek out every single avenue until we find that one small avenue that will bring people some type of recognition or relief. But if you can't see it, you're not going to find it. You're not going to know what to look for. Your doctors are not going to know what to do with you. And it's just step one. And it's a very common sense step one. I can totally see why the powers that be do not want any of this to be touched, because if we do exist, if we do have a legitimate code that shows that we do exist, then depending on what that number is, they must already know, because they're pushing so hard on all of this. There may be some problems for them in future drug rollouts, right? I mean, they've already made out like bandits.
They do not ever want to discover the rate of adverse events. They work in wild circles of cognitive dissonance and avoidance to prevent themselves from being made aware of the actual rate of harm caused. They don't want to know.
And okay, on that, just to illustrate your point, so there is a injured medical professional. She was at the playground in Atlanta with her daughter, and she was playing, and there was someone that worked at the CDC there. And the employee at the CDC was like, oh yeah, I work in this and this department. She's like, oh really? Let me tell you about my COVID vaccine injury. And the mom, the CDC employee, literally started gathering up all of her stuff, head down, gathered her stuff, ran to get her kid off the playground, and they literally ran away. Because if they find out about it, they have to do something. There's like whole procedure.
Right.
And she just didn't want to have to deal with it. And so she ran away from it. We've heard the exact same scenario as from injured people talking to Pfizer employees.
Yeah.
So when you say they don't want to know, they
don't want to know.
really don't want to know. Like they just...
Yeah. They hide behind the phrase, there's no evidence, which sounds like we've looked into it and found no connection. But what it actually means is we refuse to look at it or even, acknowledge its existence. So there's no evidence at all because we are plugging our ears and closing our eyes and screaming la, 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 hoping you go away.
I don't even know if that's what the mid-level management type people are seeing. What they see is my bosses, who I am terrified of, have made it very clear that these types of topics cannot be touched. But then they also have required that if any of us hear anything about it, we're supposed to fill out a mountain of paperwork to inform the company of what we've been informed of.
Right.
So it's kind of like they're all under a little bit of mob boss control. And but we saw that through the pandemic too, with people on mandates, right? Like it didn't take very much to get people to roll up their sleeves when they initially questioned. All they had was a little bit of a threat to their work, which is an important threat. Anyone that buckled, I don't judge you or whatever. I'm just making a point that it doesn't take very much for them to get us to do what they want, including their own employees who they have under massive contracts that they can and can't say certain things.
Especially when they're straight up lying to you about the risk you're undertaking.
Correct. And you're one person, just like a vaccinated person, right? You're one person, a big system. Those employees in those companies, they're one person in a huge system that is stacked, and they've methodically made sure that the odds are stacked up against them. But
Yeah, the culture of those organizations is to remain deaf, blind, and dumb to these challenges specifically. And all of my experience being in this space, not just in Texas, but in multiple states, like I'm the only staff member who's done this advocacy in multiple states and multiple different legislature makeups. And it's the same system everywhere you go, and it's the same resistance, and it's the same drivers to the resistance. And one of my biggest missions from the Lord is to help people build these bridges of connection and develop these tools to reach out to others successfully and help open their perspective and deepen their understanding of why this matters to you as an individual, to us as a society, to our government as a whole. Like, this matters.
Yeah.
And, we have to dig deep and find, that professional regulation to not lose our minds in the face of such insane resistance and unwillingness to acknowledge us, and persevere and continue to move forward with as much grace and, eloquence as we can to fight for what we know is the truth.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to make sure to tell our audience? I know that you can find information about Brie at React19.org. Do you have a specific link on your page to go to this comment section for the ICD-10 code petition?
There's actually an email address, so I'll send it to you.
Please, and we'll put it on the screen.
It'd be
Yeah.
great. And it's just we're just asking people to respectfully request that, so all of the anger and frustration that we feel, they don't experience that. That doesn't connect with them at all. And so, but we are
It actually works
the-
against us.
100%.
100%. That's why I like to tell people it may feel good to you in that moment to scream and like rage like Godzilla through Tokyo, but all that does is create more resistance and more adversity for you, the advocate. It does not work in your favor.
No, it's psychologically for people when they're being confronted, the automatic response is, nope, I'm done with this. Right.
Yes.
And
They slam the door in your face,
yeah. And
metaphorically and literally.
yeah, we got to remember that a lot of the people that we're working with, including the diagnosis code team, they didn't actually do this to us. Right.
Yes.
It's other people. And so, but through methodical, like just trying to peel back that programming and those layers, we've been able to get to a point where we can say, hey, we support this diagnosis code. I think it's a good thing for people to be able to get medically treated for a medical condition.
Right.
Such as a that's some injury. So, yeah, so people
Which is a real thing.
and if people have family or friends that are injured by the COVID vaccine, please reach out to React19.org. If they're in need of medical assistance or financial assistance, we have programs for each of those, and we are ready and very willing to help.
That's your care fund, right?
Yep.
And don't you also provide emotional support through support groups of other injured people so that they can come together and, start to heal those really deep wounds?
Yeah, there's a woman, she's also injured. Her name is Julie Woods. She's just a stellar human inside and out.
I met Julie. She's lovely.
Yeah, and she's put together a really good program for like video support groups where people can just get on. So if you're in bed and you're isolated, you can connect with other people, face to face through your phone or your computer and just feel validated and a little bit more like a human.
Yeah. I mean, the dehumanization and the callous disregard are the things in this whole situation that I just find the most repulsive.
Yeah.
Like, how can you be so demeaning to another human being and to be so callous in your lack of care for them? It doesn't compute for me.
Yeah. They just don't care.
They just don't. And it's so hard to accept that they just don't care. But you care, Brie, and I care. And React19 cares, and Texans for Vaccine Choice cares. And we're going to continue to fight and care and bear the burdens and make the sacrifices to make it happen, because someone has to do it. And like you said, when you're called and you're chosen, you are called and you're chosen. And whatever way it upheaves your life, because I know it upheaved my life, I'm sure it upheaved yours, you just roll with it and you go, okay, this is my pivot point and I'm going to pivot to the best of my ability.
Yeah.
So if you out there, audience, are struggling either as a vaccine injured person, feeling alone and strapped for cash, trying to pay for your treatments to recover yourself, please consider going to react19.org and connecting with Julie to support groups, applying for their care fund to get some help, enjoying the wonderful research that they've been doing to find ways to recover you. If you're an advocate who's been struggling to connect with others and not knowing how to be impactful, please connect me at TexansForVaccineChoice.com. We provide so much training to our volunteers, all the way down to communications, to help you learn how to have this conversation with love and results with lots of different types of people. The time to get involved is right now. And if you're wondering if you should, the answer is yes. I want to thank you so much, Bree, for your time today. I know you're very busy and I know that you struggle with health challenges, and I'm so deeply appreciative of you taking the time to share with us today. I want to thank the audience for taking the time to listen. I am Carrie Bigford, Outreach Director with Texans for Vaccine Choice, and this has been another engaging episode of Shot Callers. I'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Shot Callers podcast. Please, if you found value in this content, rate us and share the podcast with a friend. It's a great way to get the message out and to empower everyone to make informed decisions. Until next time, never forget, we are the Shot Callers.